Hi, guys. Welcome to Tickers, the new series on the Limitless podcast, where we discuss listed companies on the Jamaica Stock Exchange. I'm Matthew,
And I'm Thaon.
and today we'll be talking about Lasco Distributors, ticker as LASD. But before we get into the video, we would love if you guys would subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers by the end of this year. So drop a subscribe if you're not subscribed already. But if you're an audio listener, you remember that you can follow us on all podcasting platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all of them. It would really mean a lot if you guys follow us. And without further ado, let's get into it.
Let's go.
Gonna share my screen.
So, guys, we just spoke about LASM in our previous episode. I want you guys just check that out as well, because there are going to be some synergies with that Tickers episode and this, especially when we come closer to the end. So, Preston, take it away.
Okay, so last D, follow our usual format of tickers. So in terms of the money, how does last D make money, right? So Lasco Distributors tells you essentially they are a distribution company and they distribute Lasco products, but they not just Lasco products, they distribute other products. And their sister company, Lasco Manufacturing or LASM, is also listed on the Jamaica Stock Exchange. And some of their products are really, they either fall into two categories. There's what you call the consumables and then the pharmaceutical products. Consumables make up the bulk of their revenue, 80%, and the rest, 20%, is like the pharmaceuticals. So in terms of consumables, what does that mean? They have different categories. So they have what they call like the nutrition category, which is, essentially like lots of different food and drinks. Lasco food drink, for example, Lasco baby, iCool. And I remember I mentioned that they don't just distribute Lasco branded products or products that are manufactured by LASM. They also distribute products manufactured by other manufacturers, and some of them just happen to be listed on the JSE. So Salada is also a listed company, and then Mountain Peak, which is under like the Salada brand too. So they distribute for Lasco, but they also distribute other products too. Then they have what they call like the hygiene component of the business. And this is like, they have the Last Shore, which is, Lasco's own. But then also they have other international companies. So for example, Dove, Tresemme, Degree. I even, I don't know which deodorant you use. I use Degree. So they distribute. So they distribute these a lot of these other brands. So it's not just Lasco only products. They distribute a lot of other products too. And I just have some more of the products here that everyone I'm sure there isn't a Jamaican that doesn't know. Yeah, I use sometimes I use the Dove soap too. So they use oil, vegetable oil. You mentioned that you like the Lasco food drink, Lasco iCool, Jack Mackerel, toothpaste, all kind of different stuff. And there's lots and like macaroni and cheese. It's just a lot of different, food products that people would buy at home. I mean, they're not the only one that do these kind of products. A lot of times, there's the other competitors, and we'll get into some of the other competitors. I mentioned iCool that they sell water too, corned beef, all kind of different cooking related products, So they sell a lot of those stuff. And they're known kind of as more like they're kind of known as budgets for some stuff too, I'd say. Like more budget friendly. Yeah. So that's most of where Lasco makes their money in terms of distributing food. Well, consumables, which is like food, and then also the hygiene products. But they also have their other division, the pharmaceuticals division. But what I found is that even though in the reports, they report it as pharmaceuticals, it's not just pharmaceuticals, because pharmaceuticals would say, it's like things drugs and stuff like that. But it's not just drugs. They actually do certain things like diagnostics and certain machines and stuff like that. So, for example, they have certain partnerships with some of these companies, which are international companies. So, for example, Rush is actually, they have a lot of different machines that people will use in the lab. So like if you're someone, we've all probably done some sort of blood test at some point. Rush, for example, is one of the manufacturers. They manufacture some machines called the Cobas machines, and then those machines are used for a lot of different blood tests. So Lasco is actually the distributor of those machines. And then those machines also need certain chemicals and components and other stuff that have to be distributed. So they also distribute that because of that partnership with Rush. So it's not just pharmaceuticals, even though it says just pharmaceuticals. There's all kind of different medications and medication related machines and stuff like that. So it's almost like, I think they should actually probably say Lasco Healthcare
Mid.
Division instead of
Oh,
pharmaceuticals.
true.
Yeah. But that's still not the bulk of their revenues, but they do, I think, I had a picture of how like one of the machines looks. You see this?
Yeah.
So these are kind of like some of the machines that they, for example, distribute, that labs in Jamaica that you may go to actually, get it from Lasco because of the partnership that they have with Rush. So yeah, that's some of the ways that they make their money. Other thing I looked at was comparison. So I did a table up here. You can see there is Last D. So the other thing I should point, I was comparing other people like Wisinco, the GraceKennedy, the Seprod, and also their sister company Last M. Remember that Last D is just distribution, Last M is just manufacturing. But for example, Seprod is manufacturing and distribution. Wisinco is both manufacturing and distribution. GraceKennedy is finance plus manufacturing and distribution. So it's going to be natural that they are not going to be as large as these because these also have other aspects of their business.
Mm-hmm.
So I was looking at, for example, market cap. So you can see out of their competitors, they have the smallest in market cap. Market cap, guys, is you just take the amount of shares that are outstanding in the company and then you multiply it by the stock price. And at the time I was doing it, this was the stock price. Also, I looked at the revenues and profits. So you can see that, well, distribution usually gets more revenues, but you have less profit margin. So Last D actually has more revenues than Last M. But in terms of the actual profitability, Last M makes more profit because they actually have a higher profit margin. And another valuation metric that is commonly used is called the PE ratio, which stands for the price to earnings ratio. Essentially, what you do, you take the profit of the business, which was here. So, for example, Last D over that period, the 12 months at the time, which was March this year, their audited financials, they had made about just under 1.5 billion in profit. So you take that profit, you divide it by the number of shares in the company, and you get what's known as the earnings per share. Because you're taking the earnings, which is the profit, and you're dividing it by the shares, getting earnings per share. Then, with the earnings per share, you take the stock price and you divide the stock price by the earnings per share. That is what gives you the price to earnings ratio. And generally, the lower the price to earnings ratio, people would say that, the company is more undervalued in some ways, but it's not that simple. It's not like, just because the PE is lower for this company means it's a better company. It's not that simple. I wish it was, but it's not that simple. And the other thing I should note is that GraceKennedy has a much lower price to earnings ratio because you can see here, the GraceKennedy's price to earnings ratio is just about 9. Because generally financial companies trade at lower price to earnings ratio, and GK has that financial side. But you can see Last D in comparison to Last M, Seprod, Wisinco has a lower price to earnings ratio. It's about 11. So that was some of the things I was looking at in terms of the valuation metrics and the profitability. The other thing I should mention is that some of their competitors, I was comparing them to some of their competitors. So they have some competitors that are actually listed. So, for example, R.A. Williams, that just listed, medical disposable and supplies, they have a pharmaceutical division, and Indies, but Indies is also, I guess, manufacturing too. And I was looking at, okay, how do they compare in terms of their revenue? So, like, Last D actually has the highest revenue out of the others compared to R.A. Williams, MDS, and Indies. Last D has revenues of just under 5 billion. R.A. Williams is like 1.5, MDS is like 2.5, Indies is like 1 billion. And Last D is actually quite profitable too. Like, out of them, like, they're making 261 million. Their net profit is about 5%, but R.A. Williams is about similar net profit margin, but 84 million. I couldn't find the MDS, the pharmaceutical division wouldn't have the you want to see the net profit itself. Yeah, split up. But Indies you can see here has a higher net profit margin, but they are also into manufacturing. So that's like generally gonna have a higher. Yeah. Yeah. Um so yeah, that was it's some of the stuff about the money, and I mentioned some of the competitors, the GraceKennedy, the Seprod, Jam Teas, Wisynco, Indies, Massey. One of the things that I was looking into was the National Health Fund. So the National Health Fund is essentially like an arm of the government of Jamaica. They What they sometimes do is that they have to say, okay, we have all these hospitals, these health centers, these clinics, and they need certain medications. You know, so the patients need certain medications. How are we going to get these medications to them for an affordable price? And they essentially put out like a bid that says, okay, or a offer document to say, hey, do you want to supply these drugs? Because we need these drugs, and you have a partnership with, say, a lot of these manufacturers are in like India or Bangladesh or these different they're not usually manufacturing a lot very heavy in Jamaica. They manufacture outside, and then we just import it and then distribute it. So the NHF last year actually issued a huge amount of contracts, 27 billion Jamaican dollars worth of contracts. So a lot of these companies. So what I looked at was that last D, out of all of that, they were actually the largest. They got the largest contract or percentage of that big contract, 14% or about just about 3.9 billion. They even beat out Carimed slightly, and so they had some other competitors like Facey Commodities. There's some other. The interesting part was that it's not just Jamaican companies that were bidding on it too. So Jamaican companies have the partnership with like the whatever other country company, but there's some other companies that outside of Jamaica, like there's this company about Ethnor del Isto SA. They're from Panama, and they applied and they got like amount worth what 2.3 billion. Massive distribution. There's another company, TS Farm. Apparently, they're a US company. They were able to bid and get a significant portion, 1.6 billion. So there are a lot of different players in the space. But I'm like, wow, Lasco Distributors, and this would be the health division or the pharmaceutical division. They were the largest in terms of that contract, and so if you meant it, government contracts are some of the largest contracts out there, if not the largest contract out there. And then I also saw R.A. Williams R.A. Williams is a smaller company. They're not as they're smaller, so but they got a decent portion of it, about 500 million. And the other thing I noticed too is that I think R.A. Williams had said in their prospectus that just because you start out with this doesn't mean you can't get more, because what they were saying was that say Carimed says, okay, we can supply this amount of drugs, but then their supplier, their manufacturer, has issues and they can't supply Carimed, like they're having some supply chain issues. They can't supply Carimed with the drug. But Last D has a partnership with a manufacturer, and they're like, no, we can supply the drug. We have it. They can essentially get that business from them. So it's not just like a set thing, like it's kind of fluid.
Yeah.
So I guess it'll be interesting to see how does Last D how does Last D navigate that, and are they able to still keep up with that value of the contract and see if they can grow it too. And the other thing I looked at was even their balance sheet. For example, they, just similar to Last M, we did a video on Last M, you guys should check it out. Last D they don't have a lot of debts, and they both of the Lasco companies love to sit on a lot of cash. Like up to June this year, they're sitting on 1.8 billion in cash and cash equivalents, and like just under a billion or 750 million in short-term investments. Like these guys, they sit on a lot of cash, like and they don't have really much debt or if any debt. So they're very nimble, I'd say. They can afford to take on debt if they want. And what else? The other thing I think that's important. I would do mention this in the last time video, but the sugary drinks tax. So Jamaica doesn't have a sugary drinks tax yet at the time of us recording, but there it has apparently been in the talks for like a while. The reason why is because sugary drinks increase your risk of certain conditions, like for example diabetes, and a lot of Jamaicans like to drink sugary drinks. They love to drink their Pepsi, their sodas, and their Coca-Cola, whatever. We love to drink it. You know, there was the Ministry of Health put out some statistics that said over 75% of Jamaicans drink at least one sugary drink a day. And then if you look at statistics, like if you were someone that drinks one sugary drink a day, you're increasing your risk of conditions like diabetes by like 26%. And then you already being of like African descent and already having, like, think about it, tons of us, like your parents or your family, a lot of them have sugar, or what most people call sugar, or diabetes and pressure and those stuff. So it's like, because it's in your family, in your genes, if you also then drink a lot of sugar, you're going to increase it even more. So we're at risk for diabetes, and a lot of us have these conditions, and it can really, it can cause you to lose your legs, cause you to lose your eyesight, can cause you to get heart attacks, strokes. It can cause a lot of issues, right? And what the sugar drinks tax, I guess the idea of the sugar drinks tax is that, hey, the drinks that have a certain amount of sugar, if we tax them, it makes them more expensive. And so if it's more expensive, people may be less likely to buy it. And maybe instead of buying the sugary drink or the drink with tons of sugar, maybe they either buy water or they buy a drink with less sugar. And then because maybe the manufacturer who was making this very sweet drink with tons of sugar is like, wait, people aren't buying my drink anymore. Let me switch and reduce the amount of sugar in my drink. So I think that's the idea of it. And other companies or other countries have actually implemented it. Like I saw that in Barbados, they had put a 10% health tax on sugar drinks in 2015, and they saw a 4.3% decline in weekly sales of sugar drinks and a 7.5 increase in bottled water sales. So people are drinking more water and less sugar drinks because they tax the sugar drinks more. So it seems to work, and it's not just Barbados. There's a lot of other countries that have implemented it. So I think it'll be interesting because Lasco, we listed out some of their products, iCool, food drinks, things like that. Those have, a decent amount of sugar in it. And I see that they actually, I guess they're trying to be proactive. They actually released a reduced sugar version of their iCool a few years ago. And I can pull it up here. It's slightly more expensive than the full sugar one. So you can see the usual one, the grape, this was like $102, but then the reduced sugar one is like $110. So it is slightly more expensive, but maybe when the sugar drinks tax comes into play, it won't be. Maybe the sugar drinks tax would raise this one to like 115, and then the reduced sugar one could be the 110, so it's more affordable. I don't know. Yeah. So I guess it'll be interesting to see what Lasco ends up doing, or how some of them and their competitors are going to kind of fight it out. Like, will it be okay if this tax were to come into play? Is it that Lasco is going to have to? I'm sure all of the different companies are going to try to pivot if they're not even thinking about it now.
Definitely. I mean, a lot of them do have the lower sugar alternatives. Who is it? Is it that Wisinko distributes Coke? I also have Coke Zero that I distribute. And I drink Coke Zero just because I'm trying to cut out a lot of the sugar,
but hold on,
I like the taste of
it. Really has. Why is it zero? Is zero sugar or zero what?
I'm pretty sure it's also zero sugar and 0 calories.
What I saw is that some of these what sometimes happens is that, okay, you say you can't have this amount of sugar, so instead of putting in sugar, they just put something else that isn't necessarily better. It still sweetens it, but it still can cause some of the same effects. So sometimes the tax is trying to like circumvent that, so it's not just straight no it's not like a true just sugary drinks tax. It's like sugar and other products, like other things that can be like sugar mimics.
Like Splendor. Yeah, I know what you
Yeah.
mean. Yeah, I need to actually research a lot of the effects of those sugar alternatives.
Mm-hmm.
I guess we'll see.
Yeah, so I think that'll be something to look out for. And I know that they are facing supply chain issues, like the Lasco group of companies, because some of their raw materials aren't, even though they source some of the raw materials in Jamaica, some of them are sourced from other countries. And so not just them, but other companies and other countries are facing issues, for example, because there's droughts happening in Panama. And so the Panama Canal is a widely trafficked canal. A lot of ships go through it. It's a big shipping hub essentially, and you need a lot of water to actually have the canal function. So how it apparently functions is that, like, as you go through the different levels, you have to fill it up each segment with water. So if you're having a drought and you're short on water, it makes it harder, and like usually less ships can get through, which then causes a lot of delays. And say, oh, someone who would have normally, you could have reached the product to you in 3 weeks, maybe it takes 4 weeks, or maybe it takes 5 weeks because of that issue. Like the Panama Canal actually saves like a ton of time. You can see this. This is just a reminder for the audio listeners. If you want to see our handsome faces, you can check us out on YouTube, and we try to share our screen to make it a bit more interactive. So say you're someone that you're over here in, I guess, San Francisco, and you want to get something to Jamaica. You used to just come down here, take the route, go through Panama Canal, bam, you reach. But instead, the Panama Canal is blocked up, you can't get in, or whatever, it's drought, it's shut off. You're gonna have to go you could have to go all the way around, or you could, I guess, get off of another area here or something. But yeah, if it's a shipping route, that it's some of the shipping routes have definitely been affected. Yeah. And once again, Last M, there is in their ecosystem. Last M essentially just manufactures a lot of their products, and then they just distribute it for Last M. And we do a whole episode on Last M. You guys should check that out. And in terms of some of the plans of Last D, just a lot of them are basically similar to Last M. They have hinted at acquisitions. I'm going to try to put in a clip of the Big Up the Mayberry Investor Forum. They had some of the people on from Lasco recently, like a few weeks ago, and they spoke about acquisitions, and that they always said that, hey, we're open to buying businesses. We're in a good position financially. We have tons of cash. We don't have any debt. We can acquire a business, but we just want to make sure we're buying
It's
the right business. We don't just want to buy a business just to say, yo, we'll buy a business. We actually want to buy a business that fits in with us and will actually be beneficial to shareholders, not to just say take on a bag of debt and for vibes.
I would add, we have grown to this point organically. That has the investment was with that in mind.
Yeah.
And that is not to say we're not looking for possible mergers and acquisitions, but we're going to do it carefully.
Yeah.
You guys know better than I do. Most acquisitions and mergers fail. Am I correct, Gary?
Yes.
And they're failed because the appropriate due diligence is not done.
Correct.
And that is the single largest failure.
Correct.
And acquiring company doesn't quite understand the business that they're acquiring.
Yeah.
And these are the two things. We have to understand the business.
They are also upgrading a lot. So just recently, June this year, they bought some warehousing space in Red Hills, 14,000 square feet of warehousing space. And they also are increasing their warehousing space in St. Catherine by 50%. They're adding on 65,000 square feet. So they are in buying mode, They're like saying, hey, we want to be able to distribute these products. So we need more warehousing space to store the product. So let's buy up some warehouses or build up some warehouses. They also mentioned trying to grow exports. Right now in the Lasco group, what I've seen is that it's not like a huge portion of their business. Most of their business is really just Jamaica. But like it's under like it's like 5%, I think, of their business. And they're looking into some markets. They're into like the United States. They're also pushing into Guyana and other Caribbean countries. And the big thing is the possibility of actually merging with Las M. You know, that was the first time I saw it mentioned was the Mayberry Investor Forum.
Do we look for further synergies? Does it make sense to do some sort of formation where it becomes one company? And that is being discussed as we speak.
Yeah. So, I mean, in closing, it's back to Dan's point, you know, why should somebody invest in Last D and or Last M? So these key points that we've just discussed a while ago could be compelling reasons because, you know, if at some point the company decides to come together and it drives efficiency from saving in expenses, Dan, you know, that efficiency in generating profit increases materially. I mean, what does that look like in the stock price? One,
They said that they have actually talked about that in the past, you know. Funny thing, like I remember when I had when I had first found out about Last M and Last D, and I realized, wait, they're separate companies. I had thought that it had
It was
split.
just
Like
one
I
Lasco group.
thought,
Yeah.
no, I thought like I guess they had maybe initially listed as the group and then they spun off.
Oh,
I didn't realize that they listed individually.
separately. Why do you think they did that? I actually don't know when it happened, so I'm not entirely sure. I feel like
As
it's
in why
maybe
they listed,
to
I
get
think it was
on the junior
2010.
market. Yeah.
I don't know. I guess it's hard. I guess sometimes when you have the company kind of just focused, like okay, you have management that's just focused on manufacturing. You have management just focused on division. It's like you can get a better. Sometimes you can get a better outcome.
You're
I'm
talking
wondering
like
why.
Jamty as a holding company and they having different other companies.
Jamty, I guess, is a bit different, I'd say. But then you
not
don't
really.
have
You have the
no, 'cause
financial arm. You have the
I feel like
manufacturing arm.
Jamty, we're getting a tangent here. Jamaican teas, they have their, remember QWI is really kind of like the bag. So Jamties is almost like saying, hey, we don't really want to hold this bag anymore. So let's have a company that people can invest in that's just like manufacturing and stuff, and we can also raise money through that.
Well, yes, agreed. But I was just saying in terms of it as a group, like let's say, you know, you have Lasco group and under it you have Last F, Last M, Last D, right? Jamtees is similar to that where you have Jamtees as a group and you have Caribbean Dreams, QWI, etc. So it's just almost like a holding company. So top shareholder, which you're gonna go into is, you know, East West Limited, who is, you know, probably Lascelles Chin. Not sure who else is a part of that holding company, if there's anyone else. But I was just saying there are similarities there. And I guess you're gonna go into this is what the top 10 for Last
so
D?
these are the top 10 shareholders in Lasco Distributors. You can say the top 10 owns 83% of the company up to the time of recording. The largest shareholder is East West St. Lucia Limited, which is like 47%, which I think is Lascelles. I don't know how much, I guess, of it he owns because it's a St. Lucian company, so I guess we can know. And then he also owns some shares directly, about 29%. You also have Mayberry Jamaican Equities, which makes sense because like Mayberry helped them list many years ago. So they took a stake in the company.
True.
And one of the interesting things I was saying is that we like to look at, you know, management. If you guys should check out the Last M video, I was looking at look at this James Rawle. I think he's the chairman of Last M and Last D, but I think he's managing director of Last M.
Last D. Oh.
No, of Last M, I think.
Last M. Yeah.
But then, you notice he owns shares in Last D here, and a significant portion. M. And then John De Silva, I think he is either the CEO or managing director of Last D, and he also owns shares in Last D, but then I wasn't seeing ownership in Last M.
Yeah,
and I think these shares were actually issued to them as a part of I think these were issued to them recently, like as a part of compensation. So I kind of found it interesting that they own shares in Last D. If what I saw before was correct, that they don't seem to own shares in Last M, but then they own the shares in Last D. I don't know. I found that interesting. And then we can look at how the stock has traded. I mean, over the last year, it hasn't really moved that much. I guess last M has moved more. September last year it was $4.21. Now it's like $4.62. Yeah, can see that. But I mean, for me, I think the most interesting thing is that possibility of the merger. Like, I'm wondering how, because I'm trying to think like, hey, how would they do it, and then which stock would be better to own? Would it be better to own Last M, or would it be better to own Last D?
Last D. Which one has the greater upside?
Yeah.
Which one has, we always like companies who are management themselves own pieces of the company. And when you look at Last M versus Last D, more management owns Last D. So is it, and they got those shares recently. So is it that, there may be a greater upside for Last D versus Last M? It's always good to, I'm not entirely sure. And when would they do it? Because they migrated to the main market recently. And I mean, Last D also got an okay rise. They went as high as, $5, coming from like $4 at the beginning of the year, below $3 in January. So, well, around $3 high, sorry, $3.70s, $80s. So I'm not sure, to be honest. Right now I like what I see from Last D. And look back in April 2023, they're coming from $2.30. Yeah. So both companies have a lot of potential. I'm just trying to time when they could possibly be doing this merger still, because they've been doing steps and they've been vocal saying that they want to do it, and they've migrated and so on. So let's see.
You remember their timeline may be different than yours, though.
Also true. They are very patient companies. Same company, I guess, but pretty patient companies, sitting on a ton of cash, not really doing much. They've been sitting on a ton of cash for years.
I thought that Last M should have done like a share buyback, to be honest.
Yeah, I thought they were going to do a share buyback as well.
Even Last D could do it. They have so much cash, and then
because at the time their PE was 5 and they're making a lot of money. It was pretty low. Yeah, $4 when Last M was around $4, $5. So I thought they would have at least considered a share buyback with the amount of cash that they're sitting on and their PE at the time, which was below 10. So I don't know. Interesting times. Do you think they're gonna acquire companies in the near term before like the merger?
Boy, I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't put it past them, but I guess we'll see. Sorry, I don't know how to predict something like that. It's really they feel like it,
Yeah, because they haven't really been doing much of that either.
No, but they could even get acquired, Suppose they merge the companies and it's someone who wants to own, to make it more attractive to an outside investor that says, hey, we'd want to own a manufacturing and distribution company. We think there's more value in the companies being merged.
True.
I was looking, remember I had done you can see my screen, like if you combine, for example, Last M and Last D by themselves, when you look at them and you compare it to, for example, I was thinking right now, if Last M and D were one company, Last MD, they're actually close to Cinco in terms of the amount of revenue.
Yeah.
They're doing 41 billion in revenue. Cinco did 54 billion. So like them together is quite
I understand what you're saying.
Coming from, I mean, but Last M by itself, the 12 billion, that's on me, I guess.
Yeah,
But
true.
Together they're quite a large company, And the other thing I was mentioning was that if you look at I don't know how the ownership is gonna be affected with Lascelles Chin, the great Lascelles Chin passing. So like what was his succession plan, or is it like who gets the shares? Like what if the family or whatever I guess the share says, hey, we don't want to
They'd
own
probably
it.
be willing to sell.
Or
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, for the right price, I don't know. Stuff like that, I really am not sure about.
You know, it would be interesting. So, you mentioning, them possibly selling, who would they sell to? Normally, in this kind of business, I see a lot of competitors buying out each other and consolidation happening in a lot of these industries. I'm looking at some of them, and one of them particularly has a 2030 plan where they are planning to grow via mergers and acquisitions. It wouldn't surprise me if they decided to take a stake in a company like that. Especially even like just thinking about GK, and I'm talking GraceKennedy for anyone that's not understanding what I'm saying. But think about it, Grace owned. I mean, they owned a few water brands, and then they decided, hey, we're just gonna buy another one. It's not unlikely, and that's when they bought 876 water. So I mean, it's not unlikely that they would be thinking of doing something like that, where they're saying, hey, I like Lasco, right? And we want to increase our distribution network. They don't really do pharmaceuticals in terms of, so that would be a good way for them to step into that. But they could just own a piece of the manufacturing and distribution company, streamline a lot of those processes. They are focusing on a lot of exports as well, because they want a lot of their revenues outside of Jamaica, and Lasco is a brand name, like a big company. I mean, if you're exporting to the diaspora and those different markets that GK is also targeting, I could see them doing that. I could see them buying a piece of Last MD. I don't know. Could just be me speculating. It would be funny if we come back a couple years from now and see that, and people come back to this video and like, "Whoa, Thaon, how'd you predict this?"
Lucky, I guess.
But, lucky guess, just speculation. But yeah, I mean, hey, a lot's changed, and with Sir Lascelles Chin passing, you normally see when somebody holds that much shares, once somebody's that big in the company, a majority shareholder, and they pass or they exit or so on, a lot happens in the company. So let's see how the company changes with the shifting tides. But I'm curious to see what happens between Lassam and D. Want to watch again?
So guys, I hope you liked that video. Drop a like if you liked it. If you're watching on YouTube, once again, subscribe if you're not subscribed already. Let us know how you liked our new series tickers. And yeah, Limitless out.
Peace.